The NFL stands for not for long.
Second down and goal from just inside the 2. Backs offset. Sharga and Armstead. Rollout. Walker still running out. Looks to the left. Wide open. Thompson touchdown. Colin Thompson with the touchdown. There was nobody within 20 yards of him.
What a catch off the bobble. Colin Thompson scoops it up.
Lofton corner the end zone. It is caught for the touchdown. The first NFL touch for Colin Thompson is a score.
Too many words I left to say, so they get left behind. I can't let you go, I won't let you know. I'm coming.
And welcome back to episode 5 of Not For Long Media. I'm your host, Colin Thompson, and I'm honored, I'm blessed today to have a friend, co-producer, producer, and someone I've gotten to know through sports, through the XFL, through the Tampa Bay Vipers, Justin Ayers. Justin, how you doing, man?
I'm great, man. Thank you for having me on. I'm looking forward to, chopping it up here and ready to get rolling.
So I added Justin to some of what we do pre-podcast. You're getting prepared to listen to the Doug Ellin podcast. Doug, famous for what he has done with Entourage. He's a creator, the writer. He's produced a couple episodes. He is Mr. Entourage. Check out their podcast, Victory the Podcast. Again, Doug Ellin episode is coming up here in a little bit. But first, we wanted to talk a little bit about March Madness. We want to talk a little bit about the NCAA and just touch on a few things, what's going on lately. And that's why I wanted to bring on Justin to help tee things up and we'll really just have a conversation again before we send it over to Doug Ellin. So, Justin, what's on your mind, man? What's going on? What do we got going on? A lot of stuff going on in this world we're living in today.
A lot of stuff going on, Colin. And as a veteran of the media industry yourself, I'm sure you know that the key to any kind of success in these kind of podcasts, whatever kind of medium, is you have to have a great name for a segment. You can't just have segments. So I'm just gonna throw out some names. We can go with, this just in with Justin. I don't know. That's the one I've been workshopping. So
this is new to me, folks. Like Justin and we talk all the time, 5-7 days a week here. And he's springing this on me on the moment, which I like. I really do like. That makes for great radio, great podcasting. So this just in?
Yeah. It's very egotistical. I like, that's actually the only one. So I was hoping you'd like that one.
Since I love Annapolis, Maryland, I almost want to have something with Annapolis. Like we're checking in with our correspondent in Annapolis, Maryland. But I know that it's not as catchy. This just in is very catchy. So we're going to call it this just in segment. And we're going to go from there and just kind of see where it goes.
I think that would be good. I'm very egotistical. I like having my name in things. So let's get right into it. This just in, March Madness is going on, folks. The 2021 NCAA Men's Division I Basketball Tournament, aka March Madness. I don't know. Sometimes on TV they say the Men's Basketball Tournament because I think March Madness is trademarked. But I don't think we fall under FCC guidelines on this podcast. I don't think so.
Not that I know of. Yeah, I hope not.
Me too. So they kicked off this past weekend, a full slate of games all across the great state of Indiana. Who's your hotbed? We had upsets, thrillers, a ton of fun. Colin, how much did you watch this past weekend of the tournament?
I was traveling this weekend, I will be honest, but I was dialed in on maybe 50% of the games, maybe a little bit less. But I'll tell you what, and I'm going to pump my own tires here. I got a text from our NASA correspondent, NASA George, who will be on the podcast at some point in time. He's a legend, NASA George, just get prepared for him, folks. But he texted me and said, you wouldn't believe this. I think you're in the 100th percentile of brackets. What do you mean? He's in the 99th percentile, our top 2 brackets. So I guess I was in the 100th percentile of brackets right before the Illinois loss. Of course, I had Illinois winning. So this means nothing now, but it's something cool to say that I think I was ranked like 2,500 out of, I don't know, a couple million brackets. So pumping my own tires, of course. As you can tell, I'm not as egotistical as Justin. I don't have a segment named after me, but that's okay. So yeah, I was very proud of my bracket. I picked some good, some nice upsets. The Oregon State to start. I picked Rutgers, not a major upset, but that Rutgers. What are you thinking about that? I picked. What else did I pick? I picked Ohio over Virginia, which was kind of an easier one because they had different, ailments and whatever. But I don't need to go through my bracket. It's just like fantasy. Everyone's bored. No one really cares. But a lot of thoughts on the weekend. I'm going to start here, though. We're talking about the NCAA. They really dropped the ball on women's March Madness and men's March Madness, the weight room scene. Everyone's seen the fiasco. Everyone's heard the commentary. But here's the bottom line. And we all know the major issue is, there's obviously a discrepancy between men and women's sports. My fiance played lacrosse in college. We have these conversations all the time. She talks about the lack thereof. And there's all these arguments of, well, football and basketball actually make money and at some schools, and then the other sports don't. And I get it. There is money generating, revenue generating sports. But my bottom line is this. If you work in the PR department or you are in that room, building, walking around, and the world we live in today with social media, everybody's hot mic'd, and you slip up or you let that go and you don't see that, like, hey, this is an issue. We have a weight rack that's worse than a truck stop hotel. And there's 64 teams times 20 people per team. What are you doing? Like, that was really bad and embarrassing. And, Jay Billis hits the nail on the head again. I'm not an NCAA expert. Jay Billis is a brilliant, studied law at Duke, but Jay's got a great take on it. And he said, why didn't the president step up and handle this instead of dish it off to the vice president of whatever? It's just frustrating. Yeah, obviously extremely frustrating that this is still present in the game. But also, if you were just anywhere in the PR department, everything in this world now, you need to be buttoned up. And they got blasted, and rightfully so.
You're exactly right, Colin. And the Lynn Holtzman, the NCAA's vice president of women's basketball, she put out a great quote. She said, "We fell short this year," to which everybody else says, yeah, you think? It was just a terrible scene. And then, after all the backlash and rightfully so, they finally gave the women's basketball teams there a better weight room with some cool lighting. So, what was the lighting about? The lighting was like a great job, and I give them credit, and they bounced back. Just admit you're wrong, which some people did, some people didn't, but just admit you're wrong. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. People make mistakes. I get that. But the lighting, are we kidding me? Like, it's a weight room. So I just don't get it, man. I don't get it in the world we live in today, where it's like, this is such an easy layup, no pun intended. And it's kind of like my game. I missed a ton of layups. Like, I just couldn't finish around the rim. So, it was just frustrating to me. And it was a topic of conversation and throughout the weekend in the place where I was. And I think everyone was consensus, like, this is no non-debate. This is a non-debate subject. Like, that is horrendous. Yeah, not good. But to get back to the basketball, Justin, Illinois the Big Ten, Iowa goes down. Who else went down? Wisconsin went down. Baylor smoked them. So yeah. Illinois just crushed me. And I'm just devastated because I didn't want to go chalk Gonzaga. I'm not like that. I'll have Gonzaga go to the Final Four, but I can't have them win. Everyone else has them win. I had two big stories coming out of this weekend, and you hit on one. Loyola Chicago, the run that they've been on, obviously upsetting Illinois, like you just mentioned. Loyola Chicago, they're the team in 2018, if you remember, that came out of nowhere as an 11 seed and made it all the way to the Final Four, where they eventually lost. But yeah, man, that game against Illinois. Did you see the memes that were coming out? Because Illinois Chicago center is a guy named Cameron Krutwig. And, I think Jay Billis might've said he looks like the guy that comes to your house when you like fix your refrigerator. It's just an every man's man basketball player, white guy, receding hairline, crappy mustache. And he absolutely bullied Kofi Coburn, the center from Illinois. It was
a great player. And he's a great player, Kofi. Illinois's got top end talent. The Big Ten, my philosophy on this tournament was Big Ten, Big 12, and a couple teams that I like Oregon State and Rutgers. And I kind of like the Gators because I think they're up and down. I like LSU. I think I like LSU because they have a ton of talent. But, a couple SECs, obviously, that have some. Alabama's good too. But man, the Big Ten just blew up my bracket. That was so I don't get it. I don't understand it. I don't get how you can be so good. I liked Maryland. Shout out to the Terps. They're playing today, are they not?
Yeah, they're playing tonight, Monday night. They're going up against who is Maryland? Oh, Alabama, the 2 seed.
So that's going to be a good game.
Yeah,
it's going to be a good game. So what else we got? Anything?
So yeah, obviously that was one, and the other one, Oral Roberts. So, Colin, I like to think of you as kind of an NCAA, aficionado. You play for two schools, Temple and Florida. You're well versed. Had you ever heard of Oral Roberts? Shout out Tulsa, Oklahoma.
I will be completely honest. I never heard of the school, never heard of the person, never heard of the school. I know nothing about it. Now I know it's a very religious university. I know that they wear masks 6 feet apart when they watch the games and go crazy, hugging and having a good time, which was really cool to see that video. People safely or trying to be safe, enjoying March Madness fun. But I know nothing about them. Did you?
I had never heard of them, which made it that much better because, going back to what you said about the Big Ten stinking it up this year, the Ohio State loss in the first round.
Oh, I forgot about them.
Was one of the worst upsets I think I've ever seen. It was heartbreaking. Overtime loss. Dwayne Washington, Ohio State's leading scorer, wide open at the top of the key, misses a wide open three. It was, oh man, that was one of the ones that's going to hang over them for a long, long time.
And that's a loaded team, loaded program. All these Big Ten teams are like, they got these 3 players. They have these role players. They were fun to root for. They played a full season. And they had tough competition. Like if Maryland's like the 10 seed is usually pretty good. They have a pretty talented team. So yeah, they got beat up bad. I mean, we'll see how Michigan does. I think Michigan plays tonight as well, or if they haven't already. So
yes, they play a little bit later against LSU.
I've been running around today. I was traveling today. Yeah, they play versus LSU, right? St. Bonnie's was the hot pick, but LSU's got a ton of talent. Shout out to Fred Dupree, my fiance's father who went to LSU. He's talking all about the team's talent. They just got to get it moving and rowing all in the right direction. So overall, March Madness, success so far. But can we even call them Cinderellas anymore? Because it happens every year.
No, but I have some stats for you if you're interested in some stats.
I am. I'm a huge stat guy.
So this was the year that every seed except for the 16 seed advanced to the round of 32. Oral Roberts, we're giving a lot of credit to Oral Roberts. I don't even know what their nickname is. That's how little of a school they are. They became the second 15 seed ever to advance to the Sweet 16. The only other one was the 2013 Florida Gulf Coast Dunk City. So there's a lot of upsets.
I think too, Oral Roberts, I believe Cole Kublik, SEC, former Auburn player, SEC anchor, color commentary guy, Cole was saying that he tweeted last night that Oral Roberts has lost to 11 straight to SEC teams, and then they beat Florida. Florida was up 10, and Florida had an easy road. Once Oral Roberts won the first matchup, like, well, they're going to go to the Sweet 16. Here you go. Florida's got some talent. See what happens. I mean, North Texas showed some moxie too. They were fun to watch.
Yes, North Texas over Purdue is a big one. 13 over
again,
4.
Another Big Ten. And then Abilene Christian with the win over Texas. I mean, that's massive. That is massive. Texas is a good team too. So
yeah, that one busted my Final Four. I had Texas coming out of the bottom left-hand side there, make it to the Final Four. That was just done. So my bracket is garbage. I don't even want to talk about how bad I've done, but I don't even care because there's no more perfect brackets in the ESPN Tournament Challenge out of the 14.7 million that were done.
So you feel better about yourself that, there's not a perfect bracket left. If there was one perfect bracket left, would you feel worse about yourself, or would you feel,
yeah.
I
because
think
I'm like, well, what didn't I have that he had, that or he or she had that picked that bracket?
Yeah. So for those that are just listening now, we did something called March Goodness, which is, hey, for every bracket entry you enter, us and our friends at Opinions on Pickens, not for long media, Opinions on Pickens, will donate $1 for every bracket entered. And that money goes to the charity of choice for the winner. So I think we have 50 people. Alyssa and I at Opinions on Pickens, we're going to talk about the donation thing, but it's going to be up over $100 donated to the winner's charity choice. So it's fun. It's free. Shame on you if you did not get in. It's all good though. We appreciate you guys tuning in and listening again. Doug Ellen's on the way. But first, I want to talk about our sponsors. You guys have heard about them already. I'm going to continue to talk about Paul and Dave over Wealth Advisory Service. These are people that I become friends with, people that I'd be able to, get to know, their families, their friends. Really, they've been a part of our family now for 10 plus years. And they're financial advisors that I've been able to trust and work with, especially with my first year in the NFL and making some actual money now and sitting down and planning things out for the future. And even when I didn't really have anything, I was sitting down and just figuring out what was next. And then again, If you're on the retirement side of things, you're not going to find anybody else. If you don't know them, you should. If you're in the Northeast of part of the country, Delaware, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey, you're going to see their commercials. They do a nice job. They got a little 30-minute commercial here, and then it followed up by another 30-minute commercial, 30-second commercial there. Again, Paul and Dave, Wealth Advisory Services, wealthadvisoryservices.com. Again, if you don't know them, you should check them out. The original Fudge Kitchen. We're shipping fudge across the country. Saltwater Taffy. St. Patty's is over, but if you're still an Irish potato fan, they're doing them. They got stuff coming up for Easter. We always go there and get the chocolate hearts for Valentine's Day. We're going to get the chocolate bunnies for Easter. So again, fudgekitchens.com. They ship fudge across the country. Get something for your significant other's birthday, anniversaries, spring's on the way, a lot of great holidays, Mother's Day, Father's Day into summer. So check them out, the original fudgekitchens.com and wealthadvisoryservices.com. So this just in, our first one. Anything else before we wrap it up and send it over to Doug Ellin?
Nope. I think that about does it.
That about does it. So who do we think is going to win now, Justin? Like before we go, like, is there, well, I shouldn't even say win, but who's going to be the team of this second weekend?
Well, I think obviously I watched Gonzaga play a little bit earlier today. Gonzaga is obviously the one that I think is still going to win, but I'm just going to keep banking on Loyola Chicago. They're going to ride this hot hand of that center that's going to come and fix your refrigerator. And I think they're going to go really, really deep again.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Gonzaga is obviously advanced. This Oregon team's interesting. They absolutely smoked Iowa, hung 95 on them. Right? I mean, Baylor, Nova's, shout out to Nova. Getting there again, missing some key players, and Gillespie. Hope you're doing well, Colin. And this game tonight's going to be great with Michigan LSU. Again, this is Monday night. We're recording. Loyola, Oregon State. That's going to be a great game. How about Syracuse sneaking in with the 2-3 zone? Houston's an interesting team. Rutgers took them to the wire and was winning late. So a lot of good stuff left. A lot of great storylines. Some, true powerhouses, and then some teams that we never even heard of before this just in segment. So again, fudgekitchens.com, check them out. Wealthadvisoryservices.com, check them out. And now we will send it over to the great Doug Ellin interview. Doug, thank you so much for joining. I hope you guys enjoy.
We've always been a long shot. I'm down to roll those dice.
Well, pretty special one for me, guys. For my buddies out there, I wish they were all here right now, hanging out, drinking a beer, watching Entourage, or milking a hangover, or whatever we used to do and watch Entourage, because truly this show changed my life in a way, because it brought so many of my friends and I together to talk about, to enjoy. And I was a late bloomer into the show. 2012, my friend started getting me into it. Okay, great. This new show. I wasn't a TV guy. I wasn't a movie guy. I mean, a little bit, sure, but just wasn't. TV is so big now, right? It wasn't as big then, but right, or at least series, and it's a whole nother world, the streaming. But I remember just the good times, man. Entourage brought the good times, and we have Doug Ellin, the creator, man, the creator, the man himself. Victory, the podcast, and again, you guys heard in my intro all about Doug, but Doug, I'm ecstatic to have you on, man.
Thank you. Glad to be here. And, that's the best thing I ever hear about the show. I love when people tell me they don't watch a lot of TV, but that was the show. And it was a lot of, we had a big woman audience also, but a lot of just alpha males who, like to watch their sports and watch the Entourage. I always liked that. So
there's a direct tie between sports and Entourage, whether you played or whatever it is. And you guys had athletes on, no doubt about it, full of cameos, and we'll get into that. But a lot of episodes were just what's going on in LA. And I think people in sports, right, want to be actors and musicians, and people that are actors and musicians want to be athletes or around athletes. So you just want to be around successful people in general. And you could see in LA how many successful people wanted to be a part of that show as the show grew. I think that's safe to say.
Yeah, which was great. It was impossible to get anyone season 1. And then by, season 8, we had people like LeBron calling us, which was cool. But, I think athletes, actors, musicians, whatever, you have a guy like yourself. And I think it's funny you called yourself average, like as we got on here, but as me, who spent probably as many hours as you playing sports when I was a kid, and it did nothing for my life, but it's all I wanted to do. I think we all know we had that guy who was just better than us, and there was nothing we could do about it. And the ones that make it out, often from working class towns, they have that group of friends that they played with, who were pretty good when they were younger, but just not good enough. And I think that's why athletes and entourages, as well as actors and musicians, I think it all kind of comes into that same thing. You just have a guy with a special talent, and if he's willing to help his friends out who just don't have that talent, it's a good thing, So
It's funny. I was talking to someone today in the gym, and we were just finishing up, and I was saying like something like, "Oh, you've always probably been the best player on the field or whatever you've been." I've never been the best at anything. And any of my teams where I grew up, there was a lot of great athletes, but I still was a bigger kid or a lot of promise or whatever. And I just like the consistency of the grind, and then overcoming the injuries and all the hiccups I had over my career of emergency appendectomy, and broke my right foot twice and broke my left foot. And everyone's had those stories. Everyone's had those down and out moments to get to where they are where they're at now successfully. How about you, Doug? There's got to be some stuff over the years that you're like, man, I'm thankful for it because I'm here today because of it.
I don't even like that. The thankful for it. I mean, I've had ups and downs and Entourage. While a lot of people looked at it as like, oh, everything's great, everything works out, I used as much of that as I could in the show. The show, as most people know, was loosely inspired by Mark Wahlberg's life. And the first thing I said when I started was, Mark doesn't have any downs. There's really nothing to watch except for him live the life that we all want. And we wanted that wish fulfillment, but we also wanted to show the obstacles. And really, you saw it more through Johnny Drama's character than anyone. But I mean, I made 2 movies that played around the world, and bought a house, had a child, a second on the way. And I thought my career was over at 30. Like, I could not get a job as anything. And I thought about going to law school, and then Entourage came together. And even after Entourage, I made 2 pilots, one called The Brick that was loosely inspired by Mike Tyson, that Spike Lee directed the pilot, that didn't end up going. And then I created my own show that also didn't end up going. So every day is a grind out here. And I think, there are the guys in the NFL like Tom Brady that just, you go, fuck. I mean, I think it's funny. And I love Tom Brady, by the way, just so we're clear, who was on the show. But when people say, oh, he works harder than everybody else. No, he doesn't. Like, there's a lot of people that bust their ass all the time. And you need a lot of good things. Obviously, he's the best. But you need a lot of great people around you. And it's the same in this business. You need to be fortunate enough to surround yourself with great people that all can kind of lift you up. And as you know, in football, you need, Tom Brady had a bad injury. It could have been, could have happened again, but it didn't. So you need all those breaks.
You need people that can lift you up. I thought that was interesting. And Entourage, there's people that lifted each other up, especially that group of friends. And you were trying to portray that, right? Drama. Really, he was being lifted up by the group when he thought he was lifting everybody up. At least in my opinion, at times it looked that way.
Yeah.
Were you depicting that off of any group of friends when you were growing up, or anybody in particular? Was there someone you said, I think this is who I want to make drama after?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, obviously Mark had these core groups of guys, but I really put my friends that I grew up with into all of them. And I have a text chain. One of them's calling me right now. I have a text chain of 18 people that I know since I'm 7 or 8 years old. And that's not even the whole group. My neighborhood, we've just all maintained a closeness, and everybody has always tried to do that, help each other out. And some of us are somewhat successful. Some aren't successful at all, but we've always just been that group that does that. And I think that's what I really did want to portray on the show. No one in the group was a loser. Hopefully by the end of 8 seasons, you felt they all had their purpose. And that was really the key to me, because I think when I first started on the show, I was like, Entourage, God, that is so not my life, of a guy who would like live off of someone else or have other people. So it was important to me that, which a lot of the real ones, like LeBron James. Like people laughed at LeBron James' crew, and now they're fucking running Hollywood business. So I think it's not just taking your loser friends who have no purpose and want to steal your shit. It's about growing up with those people that really did have skill sets that may not have ever had a chance to use them if not for the fortune of being near you. So I think that always inspired me a lot. I think, as you look at the world now, it's becoming more and more where people who don't need connections and just can have their talents and get them out on the internet, like even these podcasts, which I'm doing. I mean, as much as I've, had success in Hollywood, I always wanted a radio show. And that was my dream when I was young. And I was like, okay, I never did anything about it because I wouldn't even know how to start until all of a sudden the internet and a podcast. I'm like, wait, I can do this for a couple of $100 a week. And if people like it, great. And if they don't, who gives a shit, So I think that's a really cool thing that's going on right now, that just people all over the world can show different versions of their talents and, help each other too. So
we're going to get into it though. It is the weekend. What do we have there, Doug?
Irish crickets. I love it. I can't even say that though. I'm not Irish. And I got this, a couple of Irish people who tell me it's offensive. What do you think about that?
I don't think it's offensive at all. I don't, what's wrong with being Irish and liking your beer and drinking?
So you know what? A couple of people said, again, I got a ton of stuff from Ireland, but Kevin Dillon and Kevin Connolly, who are on the podcast, are Irish American. They like to call themselves Irish. I don't know about you, but some people were like, it's offensive for them. It's offensive for them to call themselves Irish. I'm like, so I don't want to step into that, but it sounds pretty ridiculous to me. I mean,
that's the way of the world we live in today. We all know the PC grind, but hey, I mean, Irish crickets, how did that start on the podcast? I'm not going to name the beer in here, even though you guys talk about that beer. Hopefully they sponsor the show one day. Shout out to Davis's Pub in Annapolis. But, nonetheless, how did Irish cricket start? First off, let me back this up. We're talking about Victory, the podcast, Doug's podcast. We're going to get into a little bit. We're going now. Irish crickets, where did it start?
Kevin Dillon. I mean, Kevin Dillon has, played Johnny Drama, is one of just the funniest, most authentic human beings that exist. He just is what he is. And I don't know, he said it one day, and I'm not even sure if Kevin Connolly knew what it was. I never heard the term. I have subsequently found out that Kevin Dillon did not actually make it up because it is out there, but I had never heard it before. So it's, the sound of a beer opening and, it is.
I say it all the time now. I absolutely love it. My friends have caught on to it. It's great on the podcast. It's such a fun thing. And I love how I listened today to the bonus episode with Dom and you guys start the podcast with it. It just sets the tone. I just love the laid backness. I love it, but I want to touch on Kevin Dillon. Johnny Drama himself. Yeah. All right. Fan favorite, right? He drives the show, but everyone drives their show in their own way. I think everybody has a favorite. Drama obviously is massive because everyone can relate to him and or laugh at him with him. Yeah. Because he's just a man. He seems like the same guy though on the podcast. No?
You know what?
He fights it too. He's like, I'm not the same guy, but I feel like there's a lot of similarities. Not that again, the ups and downs that Drama had, but
yeah. He
seems like the same guy.
It's hard to differentiate what the differences are, but there are differences. Yeah. He's not an egotistical, obsessed with the business guy. He's actually, in fact, the opposite. I mean, I think Kevin's career, if he was like that guy, that desperate, it would be even more successful. I think he just is what he is. Like what you hear on the podcast is the guy. He is just American made, driving a Camaro, driving a Ford. And he doesn't put on anything. And, we talk about a bunch of this stuff on the podcast. He's got all these really famous friends, but he doesn't name drop. So he'll be like, oh, I was out with,
Chuck.
Charlie or whatever. Yeah. And for whatever reason,
that's Charlie Sheen, everybody. Yeah.
Whatever reason, I kind of wrote it like that in the show without really knowing how Kevin does it. But I guess what Johnny Drama really has, Kevin doesn't have those insecurities and that desperate need for attention that Johnny Drama has. But obviously there are some similarities. And, I think usually when I'm casting something, I'm rather than looking for like Daniel Day-Lewis types of guys who can do anything, I'm looking for a little bit guys who embody those characters. And of course, he's got some of that, and he's got that New York energy. And but he really is such an amazing actor because people just think like those are their choices. You wouldn't sit with Kevin Dillon and feel sorry for him, but you look at Johnny Drama and anything he fucking does, you're like, please, somebody help this poor guy. You know what I mean?
Give him a hug. Somebody give this guy a hug, man.
But he's awesome. He just is really an awesome, and he's a great guy as well. So
today on the podcast, I was listening and he's like, wait, you can rate, you can leave a rating on a show, or you can leave. I was like, wow, that just shows you Kevin. Like he's true. Like he talks about he's old school, which is so refreshing. In a world we live in today, he's like, I got to drive 2 hours into the show. And like, it's like, wait, aren't you retired? Like he's not retired, but like, this would be cool. Like for you, this has got to be a relief through COVID. Like I get to be with my buddies still. I get to do something other than the same thing every day.
Oh, honestly, it's been great for me. I have no idea how Dylan feels about it, but it's become this bit that Malibu, which again, I put in the show before he ever lived in Malibu. He didn't live in Malibu when I was writing on the show, how much the drive to Malibu was such a horror for him. But the truth is, it takes me 20 minutes to get to the podcast studio. It takes Kevin Dillon 40 minutes. You would think he's coming from Florida. I mean, every day it's like a story and this and that, but it just works for him, and you can never get mad at him because he's so sincere, and he is so old school. He was like the last guy I know to use a cell phone. He barely texts. When we were sending scripts, when he did move to Malibu towards the end of the show, the internet had come out. People got a script by email. The old days of having to drive to every actor's house and hand them a script were gone, except for Kevin Dillon. So it'd be like, when I made changes at midnight, someone would have to go drive to deep Malibu to give it to Kevin Dillon. But it wasn't because he's a pain in the ass. It was because he's just not into that shit. He doesn't care about new technology or anything,
And he produces, right? He's just an unreal actor. So it doesn't even matter in a way. Like I forget who said this. I think somebody in my football travels, a coach said the plane only, they say the plane waits for nobody, right? On an away game. And so one of the coaches said, that's not true. It waits for about 5 or 6 people. So true. Yeah, I mean, Tom Brady's a little late, or Teddy Bridgewater's a little late to the plane. Not that they are. The plane's waiting for Teddy.
I say to Kevin Connolly, I said, Dylan's our home run hitter. Like he can show up. He can be mad that there was traffic. He could not have watched the episode that we're going to talk about or whatever. And just one word comes out of his mouth. Even if I'm mad at him, you can't be mad at him because he's very authentic and just, he's fucking funny.
He's unreal. Like I always say I will meet him one day. I don't know when that will be, but we'll connect when we get up to LA, and I'd love to meet Kev. But you're like, hey, we may not even meet him because he just does his own thing. Like you can't set a plan. You can't set a schedule. When he did the show and he just left you guys and you're like, your friend, like if I was doing a show with you guys, I send you a text, listen, I have a workout in Florida. I can't do the show. He just rolled to Atlanta and you got an email from his people. Hey, he can't make it. Can you tell that story?
I mean, that's just, again, it's sort of, I can't even say that's him because I don't even know that I spoke to his representatives in 20 years, but all of a sudden it was just like, he was gone, and I think Kevin looks at the podcast, which is fine, just as like, oh, it's a fun thing. And fortunately it's working. All of a sudden we're making some money on it and blah, blah, blah. And now he's like, wait, is this a job, or what is it? So
he doesn't even know what a podcast is. He probably doesn't even really grasp it. Does he even have an iPhone? I'm sure he has to, but
he now has an iPhone, but still, I mean, posting on Instagram is challenging for him and returning text messages. But again, like I say, it's all just, there's no malice behind anything he does. And I think part of his charm is that he probably did not know what a podcast was when we started. And by the way, I mean, 3 years ago, I didn't know what a podcast was when people were going, because a lot of people told me I should do one for a long time. And I'm like, what am I going to do? And then all of a sudden it's like, you got one now. I was getting, my doctor has a podcast. My lawyer has a podcast, my real estate agent. And I'm like, why not give it a shot and see what happens? So
when I got cut by the Giants, and you're a Giants fan, that was a tough day for me. I was a nobody there, so it wasn't a tough day for you, but you do sympathize, and I do appreciate that. But I'm like, I need to do something. I want to get into media. What can I do on my own? Like you talked about, I have a voice, whether you want to listen or not. I don't really care, but I can put a voice out there and let me figure out how to do this. So this is like year 4 for me, but I'm not consistent. And that's why I'm excited with this. We're going to be consistent. We're going to do it right. I hired some people to join the team because it is hard to do it by yourself.
To be honest, though, that's the key. You got to be consistent. You got to let everybody know every week you're going to be there and what it is. And, for me, it's the exact same thing. Like being on a football team is like when I make a TV show, and I'm not the top guy until the show is on the air and things work. Until then, there are so many people I have to deal with, similar to you, with a GM, coach, et cetera, et cetera. And you just can't count on it. And what I always wanted to do my whole life was do something where I didn't need anybody else, which is like, I'm a little obsessed and I don't care with Taylor Swift. And I know it's a little hard off brand, but she sat in COVID and made 2 fucking albums that are going to win the Grammy by herself without anybody even there, reached out to some musicians and just went and did it. And it inspired me to go, I can go do this podcast. And if 6 people listen or 600 people listen, I get a chance to go talk about what I want to talk about and learn a skill that I was always interested in. So I think it's, and I tell everybody, there's no reason for anyone not to try this if they enjoy talking or looking into other people. Like there's no cost to it. And, I think they said there, I just read an article. I think there were 900,000 new podcasts released last year. So it's out there, but it's, I can't sing and I can't, paint. So I got to find something that I can do on my own without relying on all these other people. Now I still have to rely on Kevin Dillon and Kevin Connolly, which is a fucking pain in the ass, but it's at least hanging with your friends.
Victory the podcast. I love it. It's a great, strong name. You guys have a great logo. Action Park Media is successful too. That's another key is, Kevin, you guys go back and forth and I always read the reviews and you read some questions. And actually I called into the show the one day. I said, I'm just going to call in. People are like, you should call in. I know you talked to Doug, a direct message. I texted you the one day, like, hey, where can we go in LA to get some food when I was in the XFL? But they we were out near like the LA Galaxy practice facility and it was just nowhere near any of the places you sent me. Like you sent me some near me, but you're like, listen, you're not in a good spot, but I appreciate you getting back to me. 1. But right. 2, actually, that was right when that was our last game before COVID hit, believe it or not. That's a side note. Wow. But you and Kevin go back and forth, and I love it because it's very Northeast. It's a lot of love, a lot of respect, but a lot of shit talking. I absolutely love it. And people send messages like, is there beef? And I'm like, come on, man. This is Entourage. Like, this isn't like CNN or Fox. Come on.
Yeah. No, those are my best friends. And it's exactly like we talk with my friends from elementary school every day. All we do is bust on each other. And, the way I sold Entourage and why I think it worked was nobody wanted, especially back then, nobody wanted a show about Hollywood. And I just was like, this is not about Hollywood. This is about best friends trying to make it in a bullshit world where they're authentic and everything that surrounds them is pretty fake. And that's how we are, and that's why it's why I do. I love it. And we talk about everything, I mean, I actually look forward to getting on the mic, Connolly, which we talk about it a lot. He's got a little fucking temper. The guy is a fucking fiery guy. And he had some problem with his car got towed and he walked into the place and like, Kevin can he goes from sweet to but he's like, hey, just do you guys know where they tow my car to? And like someone behind the counter was like, it's not our fucking job to tell you where to tow the car. And I'm like, oh, I knew this was going to go somewhere. So we talk about all of these normal things that everyday guys go into and women as well. We bring a lot of the females who've been on Entourage and we're starting to branch out, So like I said, we had Andrew Whitworth from the Rams on last week and Jordan Belfort, the Wolf of Wall Street. So, we're going to start getting into more stuff, but at the end of the day, it really is just hanging out with your friends for an hour, I
think in the beginning, it seemed like you guys were going to go episode for episode and talk through all these things. And I was like, yeah, they're going to get so big. You'll still talk episodes and you're going to try to, and you'll bring people on that are familiar to those episodes, but you're going to have like guys like Whitworth, athletes. It's going to be the same as the show. It's going to be the same as
it really has a feeling of the show, the way it started, the way it's growing, the way I hear people talking about it. But Connolly's killing me. He's like, we got to do more episodes. I didn't want to do Entourage at all. Which he was very smart in knowing that, that's going to help us gain an audience, but I just like when we're talking about life and what goes on, but we have to do the episode. So we actually are going to do one next week. We got Jeremy Piven and Rex Lee coming on to talk about one of my favorite episodes, which is in season 2, I think, got Jeremy the Emmy, where he got fired from the agency, and he's just amazing in it, him and Rex. So we're going to break down the episode, but I still like when we just talk about regular stuff, sports, the Super Bowl, whatever it is,
And there's definitely a group that enjoys that as well. I promise you.
I hope so.
Kevin,
kills me.
He knows what he's talking about. I don't, but I know this. Like when Kevin Dillon shared today, he's like, I listen to sports talk radio. I'm like, sweet, which was such a Kevin Dillon thing to say. He's like, I don't really listen to music. I just put on sports talk. It's so Northeast, which I love.
He's listening to AM radio still.
Yeah, it's 1250. No, it was great. So Jeremy Piven and Rex Lee, I was going to ask a question, but let's go there.
Yeah.
They're unbelievable together, right? And again, you guys always talk on the podcast, would the Entourage today be PC enough? And all the guys, and you say it won't be at times, but there'd be a way to make it that way. In no way, shape, or form at times with Rex Lee and Jeremy Piven. PC. Yeah. And I have a gay brother who laughs at the show, right? It has nothing to do with it. I'm so for gay pride, but talk about writing that script, talk about their interactions, talking over what their lines were going to be the next day, because there were some offensive things that it seemed like Rex Lee handled just unbelievable.
Yeah,
and this is Lloyd, by the way. This is Lloyd and Ari. They're fighting.
You know what? We never had a single conversation about it. They're characters on a show, and again, the only thing that frustrates me about it is, like, I'll get a lot of messages, and it has turned a little bit, by the way. I think, listen, whenever there's a movement, sometimes there's overcorrections, and then things hopefully improve, whatever that means, but then head back a little bit towards what's right and what's acceptable. And it's always freaked me out. Like, nobody ever says, and this is not a knock on the show, Sopranos is genius, but nobody ever says something like David Chase, who created The Sopranos, is a sociopathic murderer when he's created characters that kill people. I wrote characters that were true to life, that I've seen in existence. In my mind, at the end of the day, they were all good people, even if they had big mouths. And they were based on reality. And anyone who lived in, you don't even have to be in Hollywood, and anyone who worked in a business environment knows that there was an Ari in every single one of them. And the thing is, what'll be interesting to see is, of course, things are going to change, because you have to be a fucking moron to ever speak like that. If you were that person that walked into an office 20 years ago and people thought you were hilarious and you were doing this shtick, and maybe you didn't know that people were saying it makes me uncomfortable, or maybe people really did enjoy your type of humor, but you can't do that anymore. I mean, so it's not about PC, it's about reality. And if I was writing a show today, I would make it realistic. And if Ari Gold walked into an office and said things that he said in 2006, it would be on the internet the next day and he would be fired. So that doesn't mean the show would be PC. And again, we all know that things still happen. I mean, Governor Cuomo is like, looks like he's about to get kicked out of office for stuff that you would think in 2020, even if you were, meaning to be innocent with it, you'd be smart enough not to act like that. But, it is what it is. But I think, the problem is when you talk about Entourage, which is frustrating, because when we came out, we were like the darling of the critics, nominated for Emmys and Golden Globes. And then by the end of it, I think that movement had started that said, oh, it's really just a show about these fucking guys who are predators. They clearly weren't. And, I feel that is changing back now. I feel like during this pandemic, there's been a real resurgence to understand, watch the show and see these are friends. We all wish we had friends that were this loyal and this good to us. And they really didn't ever do anything bad. Just, Ari had a big mouth, but at the end of the day, Ari was always home to his wife and kids, and Lloyd was his boy that he would have done anything for. So,
and I think you did a great job tying it back in. The episode where Lloyd wanted to get promoted and he's sitting outside in the cold and, this is how my father treated me and all these different things. Like, it was still funny and loose and Entourage vibe, but there was still a vibe of like, wow, these guys really care about each other at times.
Yeah. And that was the key for me from the beginning. So, again, history will judge it however it judges it. I don't apologize apologize. It's almost uncomfortable to even contemplate that because, nothing was ever written to go, let me see who I can offend or who I can upset here. It was just written to, entertain as well as shine a light on the reality of the world at that time,
How was handling all of the personalities? You had a group of 5 stars in their own way, and then a bunch of supporting actors and actresses and just all these people around all of the time. How did you handle all of those personalities?
You know what? I feel like really fortunate. We had just such a great group, which is, I think you can feel it on the show too. Almost, we're up to season 2, but almost everybody, who was on the show has come on and talked about it as one of the best experiences of their lives. And, as I said, similar to my, growing up experiences, these are people that I'm friends with for life, and from the cast to the crew, that was never an issue, of course we had our little battles and we still do on the podcast, but that's just more like brotherly friendships or, we get a lot of women as well. And, Emmanuel Shrieky, who played Sloan, has been on the podcast a bunch of times, and Constance Zimmer and a bunch of the other ladies. So it was really kind of fantasy land. I think most people feel like it was the highlight of their career in terms of working experiences. Forget the obvious success that it came along with it,
Is there a episode that stands out to you that you're the most proud of or you enjoy?
You know what? Whenever anyone asks me that, I don't, looking back at the show now with the podcast, I watch them. I really don't besides that. But the things that stand out to me are the memories of the shooting of it. Being in Mark Teixeira, who's, Yankee first baseman, should be Hall of Famer, but whatever. But he got us Yankee Stadium, and I had my son and my daughter and my father and 50 of my best friends from childhood in Yankee Stadium filming. The U2 concert on my birthday. We got Bono saying happy birthday to Johnny Drama.
In Spanish.
In Spanish, which we didn't know he was going to do in Spanish. And
it's almost better that way, Doug.
Everything about it was magical and perfect. And then Tom Brady just coming on, like, by the way, with 3 Super Bowl rings, when I'm like, we got the GOAT on this show, 3 at the time. And now
to play golf, like a real public. I mean, he wasn't stiff. He was great, but I'm saying like he was just kind of, hanging out. Like, what was he like on set? Not to go off the
honestly, this is not, he's the type of, he carries himself like everybody should. There were no agents. There was no surrounding people. His call time was ridiculously early, which we usually try not to do with star cameos, but he had a lot of stuff to do. But he was there at 7 a.m. It was freezing on the golf course. It sounds like a fake story, but got out, no stretching, no practice swings, grabbed the club, and from like 250, on a par 3, just put it like a foot from the hole. And, he was always, he was a fan of the show, and he was always great. And after 5 minutes, you kind of feel like he's just one of the guys, as opposed to like, okay, we got this big star with us. And I'm guessing that's what works in the locker room for him as well. He's just a regular guy who happens to be great at what he does,
The episode is called 4. That's one of my favorites. I want to get into another episode in a second, but back to 4. Like when Mark Wahlberg's walking in with drama or when John loses and says, I'll run another 18 and drama says, let's run another 18 holes. I just cry laughing. Like, I just love it. I just love the banter. I think you just continue to capture what it's like, what's real. Now, I don't know what happens in LA. I don't know what happens with agents, but I felt like I do now a little bit, at least back in that time. But on the golf course, you captured all of the good stuff. And then E goes with a different group, and Turtle's miserable, and tell Jamie Lynn's calling Turtle. How do you come up with all this stuff, Doug? I know that's a very blanket question, but that podcast was fantastic. That episode was fantastic.
I don't even know. I mean, sometimes I look at when I'm starting a new script, I honestly look at like, how the fuck did I do that? Because I don't know. And especially that episode, the behind the scenes of that episode at all? Because, as you
but I want to know, and so does the audience.
You mentioned earlier I'm a Giants fan, which I mean a die-hard Giants fan. I was at the Super Bowl with Kevin Connolly, by the way, watching the Giants beat the Patriots in Arizona, whatever year that was, when the Patriots were undefeated. So 08, 9, whatever it was. Can't believe I can't remember years anymore. But about 2 weeks later, my cell phone rings, and it's Eli Manning, who wants to do the show and loves the show. And, just like LeBron James wants to do the show, Eli Manning wants to do the show, you're doing the show. I write a script for Eli Manning. I get a call while I'm doing it that I should write Peyton in also. So I write Peyton and Eli. Then now 4 months, 5 months, whatever later. And so I call Eli. I have his number. I still don't even know how he got my number. He doesn't call me back. And I now have this script, and I'm like, okay. I call him again. Hey, Eli, now we're getting ready to shoot. Got the script done. Want to hear your thoughts? Nothing. I have Jerry, who played Turtle, call him. Nothing. So now we get to 5 weeks before filming, and I'm in a bad spot. I mean, we're in the middle of a season, and while I hate to even keep bringing up, but I have such animosity towards this guy to this day. I really do. So it's and he ruined my Giants. I couldn't root for the Giants anymore after this. But so he's not calling me back, and I'm like, what the fuck am I going to do? How am I going to even replace them? I got Peyton and Eli Manning. It is not so simple to change a whole script around, and what do you do, and this and that. And then I'm thinking, what other brothers? Because I've written all these jokes and he hasn't read it. So it's not like Eli read it, didn't think it was funny, which would be totally his right. If he read it and said, I don't want to do it, I don't like it, great. But I had Eli was kind of like the Johnny Drama. Peyton was kind of like the Vince, and we were making a lot of jokes about that. But I never heard back from the fucking guy. And then I'm in the office, and I'm losing my mind because I've got to write the next episode. I'm shooting the last episode. And Mark, who's not in the office often, but he's in the office, and everyone's like, Doug's freaking out. And I'm pacing around my office, throwing shit. I'm I'm totally fucked. I don't know what I'm going to do. And Mark just goes, what's the problem? I tell him this story, and he goes, all right, what if I call Tom Brady and me and him do it? And I was like, I'll figure out how to make that work, and that's what changed it. But it was kind of like this thing. And then about 4 months later, or 4 weeks later, Eli's agent called me and was like, they lost to the Vikings the following year. And he said something which is another reason why I hate agents and I hate these athletes that hide behind them, but said something he wants to focus on football. I'm sure you understand. And I said, let me tell you something. I work just as fucking hard as that guy. I get paid a lot less money than him. And I didn't call him. I didn't go, who I want on this show is Eli fucking Manning. So the fact that he didn't call me back and did that, I will never forgive it. It's just it's such a fucking clown show to act like that. And that was it. But we got Mark and Tom, which obviously it was better than it would have been anyway. And like Entourage on the camera, it always worked out. But for me, it affected my love of the Giants for years. I was like, I can't root for this guy. I mean, it just, never an apology, never sorry, nothing. So anyway, that's my Eli story.
Does Giselle cook? Is that confirmed?
You know what? I don't even remember. I definitely wrote it before we met. I don't remember, but I mean, we went out to dinner once and she was awesome. So
did you like chocolate too?
I was saying Turtle. I'm like, she's awesome, but she really was awesome. And I actually, you know what? It's sad to say. My ex-wife, we went to dinner with them and they really were this great couple, whatever. And I've been with my wife at the time for 14, 15 years. I don't even know. And I said, I said, do we connect like Tom and Giselle? And I said something like, we need to connect like them. And my ex-wife, it was funny. She said, if you looked like Tom, maybe we would, or something like that.
And you didn't say any of the other thing, because that would not have been good either. Don't even bring, I'm not even going to say it, because that gives me anxiety just picturing you saying that to her. Wow, that's fantastic. Yeah, that's one of my favorites for sure. Because I have a buddy who's a Tampa Bay Bucks fan, and obviously he supports me in Carolina. And he's like, hey, go up to Brady after the game and ask him if Giselle cooks and she likes chocolate. Can we confirm it? I was like,
I love that.
So yeah, constantly. I couldn't tell you all the entourage, like jokes and everything that has to do with like football and locker room. Like season 1, Josh Weinstein, who was just on your podcast.
Yeah.
When he says the E, not a locker room guy, E. I say it all the time. The guys that like go, there's still guys that go get changed in the stall, right? And I'm like the locker room guy now because it's been so long. I mean, my freshman year at Florida, I went into the stall and put my jock strap on. I was so scared. I had no idea. We didn't get changed in high school. So every time there's a guy that is uncomfortable, I say, not a locker room guy. And no one's ever got it other than one guy. His name is Nelson Spruce. He lives in LA. He played for all these different teams all over the league, and he played at Colorado and had a great career. Nelson's the man. He'll probably listen to this one. Shout out to Nelson.
That's the sad thing, is you got to get the young guys into it, because all the football players used to know the show. I mean, Gronkowski told me he told his friends in high school he was going to be on Entourage, and they were like, "Okay, good luck." And then when he was in the movie, it was just amazing to hear that, a guy that obviously I love. And to have him on set going, I've wanted to be on this show for over a decade is pretty amazing. But the locker room guy, that's so me. I mean, there's nothing I hate more than fucking guys like you, built like fucking animals, who walk around the gym, get on the scale with no towel, and are just like walking around. I hate that, want to talk to you naked. I don't want to talk to people naked,
I definitely put the towel on. Don't get me wrong. I'm not like the old guy who really doesn't care and it's just like folded it in, like whatever. But I think I play it safe both ways. But yeah,
there's female reporters around now. So I mean, that's
a crazy side story. This year there was none, and these rookies had no idea, because we have a female who works for our media team, and she would just walk through the locker room after practice, and guys are like, "What's that about?" I'm like, when I was with the Bears, the Giants were in training camp, so it never happened. And then I was at the Bears. I got there week 8, and I was getting changed in the locker room, walking to the shower. I didn't have a towel, and I was like 15 yards from the shower. It's right there. But for some reason, I either used the towel before practice or I didn't have one. Bears equipment guys, you're the best. I know you guys listen. You definitely gave me a towel, and I screwed it up, just covering my ass here. So I'm like, let me just walk to the shower. No big deal. Like, go get a towel. I turn around. There's 25 women in the locker room, 50, probably 50 to, 75 people in there. Right. So it's definitely unique in that sense. I was like, wow, this is a little sketchy in the locker room. Hey, it's great. It's great. Yep. Everyone handles it well. And
yep.
You mentioned Gronk though, right? I still want to get through some episodes, but the movie Gronk, like it was insane. And it was so well done. Doug, whoever said who wasn't, they weren't an Entourage fan. I don't believe that, because what do you do? We always guess, right? What are you going to do? We had no idea. Then the trailer came out. I'm like, is he serious? Like, what? This is what the opening part when like Vinny Chase is doing all that, whatever the animatronic stuff or whatever he is. I'm like, this is horrible. Like, are you kidding me? And then it boom changes, and like drama's like talking about like he's already got wood and he's not even on the boat yet. And I'm like, oh my God, we were screaming. We snuck a 6-pack into the movie theater. So talk about the movie. I don't even know where to start.
You know what? It's such a strange thing. I worked so hard to make the movie like season 1 and 2, which seemed to be people's like favorites if they had a pick. And we test screened the movie, which the president of Warner Brothers said, frame this because you'll never have scores this high in your career. That's how high the movie tested.
Wow.
And then I watched it opening weekend. I went around to different theaters. That line that you're talking about with the opening line of Dylan, every theater exploded into laughter. And
we were ready for it. We were ready for it. Like, please give us something. Boom.
And then every review started out with this line like it was the most offensive, horrific thing. And it's weird because sometimes you don't realize the culture shifted yet. And it did. The Me Too movement was still like a year away, but it was burbling or whatever the word is, gurgling up because The reviews were just about how misogynistic the movie was. And, you know, it's not that it doesn't matter to me, because it was bizarrely devastating, because the studio was so high on the movie. They were pushing me to write the second movie. And I'm like, let's just wait till the movie opens. And again, our exit polls, which means the people who paid for the movie exited, they go, what'd you think of the movie? Give it a rating. We were the highest rated movie of the weekend. And Variety, these fucking losers, you know what they write? They write Entourage was the highest rated movie of the weekend by the exit polls, but that could be because of the Entourage fans who went to see the movie. And I'm like, this is when you realize, sorry.
You're fine, man. Don't worry about it.
Yo, I'll call you in 20 minutes. I'm on a podcast. All right, bye. So
we're gonna leave that in, by the way. We should not edit this. That's gotta stay.
By the way, my home phone never rings. So I thought
I was gonna say, wait, you have a home phone? Does that come with the Wi-Fi? How does that work?
I never have that phone ring, so I thought it was the plumber gun. But what the fuck was I saying?
Perfect.
What was I saying? Fucking about the movie opening, but
Variety.
Oh yeah, so Variety, you see what the press does. They decided they were against the movie, and then they write, we tested well. I mean, the exit polls were good because Entourage fans. Who do you think goes to see Tina Fey's movie opening weekend, or Adam Sandler? His fans go, and either they liked it or they didn't. I mean, but to make it this weird thing. But anyway, there was a concerted, aggressive effort by the press against this movie, and you know, it is what it is. I would have preferred, to be honest, to make another season rather than a movie, because I didn't like trying to jam it all into 90 minutes. But I think the movie, if it was today, it would have been on HBO Max, and it would have been wildly successful. And I wouldn't have had to worry about opening weekends, which I always said, you know, Sex and the City, a lot of people are like, oh, Sex and the City. Sex and the City is a romantic comedy with a movie star, Sarah Jessica Parker, in the show. So I told everyone, do not expect Sex and the City numbers on this movie. It just is a smaller audience. Hopefully word of mouth will spread and will grow. But, you know, it was a different thing. But that's the way it goes, you know.
That is. Any hiccups throughout the movie? I know there was plenty. Kevin Connolly breaking his foot, that's definitely one. Can you tell us that story?
Yeah, well, that was, I mean, Connolly claims, you know, Russell Wilson threw him an errant pass and he dove for it. Russell's pretty on target, I think, as you know.
Pretty good.
But he fell on a rock and broke his leg. It's so weird. I was literally just looking at these videos of that day. It's Connolly's birthday today, and I was looking for like a cool video to post of his birthday. But I have Gronk and Russell like in the room with Kevin, who worked for 3 days with a double fracture in his leg. He wouldn't go to the hospital because, you know, which was crazy, but he knew it would really fuck this movie up. We were an inexpensive movie, and it was in the middle of a big scene. And I kept saying, you got to go to the hospital. He's like, I'm fine. And when he went, they said, you could have done permanent damage to your leg. But, you know, Gronk and Russell were there with him, like telling him what, you know, they would do in similar situations. So it was crazy. But Connolly likes to say he made the catch, which I don't remember if that's true or not. But
you talked about a video. There's a story about you losing a camera throughout the Entourage.
God, how'd you hear that? Yeah, that was miserable. That was the first day of the movie. I used to carry my own camera around, and like, you know, I had this little awesome Sony digital camera, and it was the first day of the movie, and I probably had like 500 great photos of the boat scene in Miami. We shot in Miami, which is supposed to be Europe, and Scott Lavin, who is one of my also childhood friends who I named a character after, who Scott Conn later played, he was with me. And I was just carrying all this shit. And I remember he like wasn't even offering to help. And I was just like the end of the day. And all of a sudden my little camera bounced twice and went into the ocean off the boat. And I just saw it drop. And I was like, oh, and those SD cards though, they actually will last. So someday it's going to wash up somewhere, but it was the first day of the movie. So it was a lot of memories. And I had a lot of my high school friends came to the set to visit that day, because we only shot in Miami 2 days. So that was a shame. I lost all those photos.
That's a tremendous story. That's just crazy. That's
sad.
It's sad. And especially in the world today, it's like all like Snapchat or whatever. The pictures, I took more pictures this year in Carolina than I ever have. I put a group in our tight end meetings. We like decorated the room for Christmas and just like did a whole vibe. So I just took as many pictures as possible, made a book at the end of it and handed it to the guys. They were like, wow,
that's
we had
so
a lot
weird.
Yeah.
So weird. That's what I did. I have these amazing books, and Connolly, who you still see on the podcast, say he's an actor. He doesn't like the fucking camera. So I used to walk around with my camera, but then we had our awesome stills photographer, Claudette, on our set. And at the end of the show, I made these 2 books that are just amazing for all the cast. And every picture you see Connolly not smiling, because every time I'd be like, get in the fucking photo. Now he appreciates it. But, I think to document that stage of your life, it's crazy not to. It just is, when I look back at this stuff, I'm so glad I have all these photos now that I was adamant about getting. And like I said, the set of Entourage was more like a group of friends hanging out, and we took the work very seriously, but a lot of sets did not have that kind of fun and freedom and visitors on the set all the time. I mean, it's like, guys who weren't even in the show were on the set. Kevin Durant, and I'm trying to think of like other people would come down to visit just because they liked the show. And is
that how you run the ship though? Is that something that like, all right, I'm the GM, I'm the head coach, this is how I'm going to run this. This is not normal, but I'm okay with it because of the type of show it is, or it just had a certain vibe to it?
Obviously if we were doing something really dramatic and serious, it would have to be different, but that's just how I like to operate. I like to operate in chaos. I like to have a lot of people around me, and I like to hear a lot of voices. I like the best ideas can come from anywhere. And, I like that relaxed environment. I think it did. I don't know that it was a plan, but I think it made it in front of the camera feel more alive, which was what I was trying to do. And so much of the stuff behind the camera mimicked what was happening in front of the camera that it was just wild.
I think one of my favorite parts of the show is One Day in the Valley. My favorite episode in the show is One Day in the Valley. When he's on the roof and Ari Gold says, Jeremy Piven says, you're looking at the #1 movie star in the world right now. And he's talking about the blackouts and rolling blackouts and sweating and dramas, like soaking wet in the car, and they're throwing water. He's throwing the water on top of the ice. And it's one of my favorites. Can you tell us anything, funky or anything good that happened that day that went your guys' way?
Well, I mean, just the whole episode, because where it stemmed from was Connolly called me. He was with Tobey Maguire when they were driving, I think, as I remember, like driving in the middle of like Nevada, nowhere. And Toby gets the call that Spider-Man's the #1 movie. And I don't want to change the story because I don't remember exactly, but I feel like Kevin said we pulled over, got out of the car. And it was just like this moment. And it's the moment everyone who's dreams of making a movie dreams about. You want to make a great movie, obviously, but you want to be #1 at the box office, like what could be a better feeling? And you want to be with your best friends when it happens. So that's where the start of the episode came from. And then obviously Almost Famous, which was one of my favorite movies. Like, some people are like, oh, you ripped off Almost Famous. No, I didn't. I used it like real people do. The moment was inspired by Almost Famous. And just like Jerry Maguire inspired stuff or Goodfellas inspired stuff, we used all of that stuff because that's how it really is. When we're sitting around talking, we're talking about our favorite movies, just like you are, and our favorite TV shows. So, but that whole shoot was, that was just everything about that episode just came together great. And obviously when you're shooting a scene like that with this big crowd and stuff, it's complicated. And we were shooting till late into the night. And Jeremy definitely didn't want to get thrown in the pool more than once, but it was a great thing. And the whole episode really just came together nicely. And Dylan, of course, stands out as usual in like just tiny little moments that he just takes over, like with the guy in the movie theater, he's making sure he stays in, and but it was fun.
I thought of that episode when you talked about how you watched the Entourage, the movie, at a couple different things. I could see someone like walking out, hey, you're going to miss the best part. Like Drama's about to say, I got wood before he gets to the boat. I could just see you saying like, Sit down.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've been in theaters with my movies, and when people like go to the fucking bathroom, I'm pissed as shit. So that does come right for me. And, you know, you're pissed because you're mad at them, but you're also insecure. Like, what do they hate the movie, you know? So you
just have to go to the bathroom. They're probably just holding it in for like 3 hours.
Either way, they're, you know.
That's great. That's great. A lot of my buddies said, hey, ask about the cameos. You know, how'd you get Kanye? How'd you get all these people? Kanye's a big one. How did that all work out?
So, you know, the guy who, you know, just like at Entourage, the guy who became like our music guy, Scott Venner, who was my ex-wife's friend from college.
Time out. Unbelievable episode on your podcast when he comes on.
Yeah.
That opens your eyes up. That's stories you don't even know about. It's fantastic. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but everyone tune into that episode. It was early on too. Maybe in like episode 3 or 4.
Early for sure. And that's, you know, that's again, that's right out of kind of Entourage thinking. It was my friend, and he used to just come and watch cuts of the show and tell me the music sucked and give me his ideas. And I started using him more and more. And then he became our guy. And now he's got a podcast with Pharrell. I mean, you know, when he was not even working at that time, he was not aspiring to do this. He just had a natural gift for it. But he became friends with all of the kind of music people and this and that. And Kanye wanted to, The Good Life was coming out. So we debuted that song. So they said, you know, we'd love to break the song on the show. And then I came up with a storyline, how we could do it. And, you know, he was awesome. I mean, he was completely normal and easy to deal with. And it was pretty cool.
We got wind here at the house, and I don't want wind to come in. This sounds bad. It's 25 mile an hour and winds and really bad weather here, Doug. So
really?
LA, yeah, I mean, it's not too bad. It's sunny, but it's just like 30 mile an hour winds at Cape May. It sucks.
Well, don't tell me how great LA is. First of all, the weather's been shit. But yesterday, my ex-wife, my brother's ex-wife, my friend Matt are all at a restaurant that I eat at or used to eat at when there was a normal world all the time. Dead center of Beverly Hills. And it's hard to, if you know LA, it's hard to explain this because, of course, it's a city. But when you're in Beverly Hills or, you know, Venice, or you feel like you're in like a nice little suburb. And yesterday, 3 guys walk up to a table, put a gun to a guy's head. This is broad daylight in the middle of Beverly Hills at 1:00 at probably the most popular lunch place in Beverly Hills, which is called Il Pastel. Put a gun to this guy's head, try to take his watch. He resists, and they end up shooting. She's okay. They end up shooting a woman right next to him. And my ex-wife and my brother's ex-wife running for cover under tables. And it's happening a lot. Like all of a sudden, LA is feeling really, really unsafe. So
okay,
I'd rather win.
Okay,
that's my point.
I love it. The last episode of the final season, a sad day. I cried. I think a lot of us did. I'm an emotional guy as it is, but some unemotional guys were crying. I'm not going to name their names on here who we watched it with, but I'm going to talk a little louder into the mic. You guys were crying. So Led Zeppelin, the final song. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, and we talked a lot on that podcast with Scott Venner about it, it's a very upsetting moment for me. I'm so big on the music of the show, and I did let Scott really start taking the reins season 3 or 4. But classic rock is my thing. Led Zeppelin is my favorite band, probably, or top 5. And it was his idea, which bothers the shit out of me because it's just it's so perfect. And yet, given who I am, it's so obvious. And he came up with that before I even wrote the script. This has to be the last song of the show. So I didn't know where it was going to end. The idea that, and if anyone remembers it, when it ends with the 2 planes taking off and Sloan and E and going to California playing, but it was really, Led Zeppelin is not easy to get. And Jimmy Page and Robert Plant, I don't even know if they speak, but we had to get them both to sign off on it. So we talk in detail on the podcast about how that went down, but it was a expensive and difficult process and took probably 5 or 6 months to make happen. And, you know, there's nothing to me that could have replaced that or been better than that. So it really worked.
Guys, go back and listen to that episode. the biggest of Entourage fans will love it because you learn about the business, one, just like the show, but two, you learn about how Entourage changed the scenery for a lot of shows when it came to music and the vibe and people releasing songs through TV shows. Like, that's a big deal. Your lasting impact, right? That's, I guess, not what it's all about, but that's stuff that I would value. And I'm sure you do too.
No, I do. I know we inspired a lot of things. And, of course that makes me happy. And we did, product placements in ways that I don't want to call it product placements because we actually didn't do product placements, but we integrated products that I loved and used in a way that now people use to obviously monetize. It was cool. I mean, I had the guys who, Maserati told me that we made the Quattroporte, that like we made that car because people were buying it after we put it on the show. And, a lot of those things, which is what was so interesting about Entourage, like our audience wasn't the Sopranos size audience, but our audience was the right audience. And it seemed to be everyone that you wanted to hang out with was watching it and talking about it. And, so I think for music, they saw songs that we put on just go up the charts out of nowhere. And some people are like, how is this happening? And then they realized why it was. And Scott talked about on our episode that I don't remember if it was on Spotify or whatever it was, but Led Zeppelin all of a sudden was blowing up. And I'm not crediting myself with Led Zeppelin blowing up. But the truth is the young people were not listening to Led Zeppelin, and
I'll be honest. I wouldn't found the song right away. I never heard the song. My dad
God, that's ridiculous.
I mean, I've heard the song probably because my dad listens to so much classic rock and I grew up on classic rock. Like I'm a diehard AC/DC fan, huge, and the list goes on and on. I love a ton of Boston. I love them.
I need you to do me a favor though. You need to spend the next 4 days and do nothing but listen to Led Zeppelin.
And I have since then. That's nice. My point. Nice. Yeah, I've heard the song, but I was like, oh, this is slow. Whatever. It was always like when I was working out or we're on a road trip or, you know what I'm saying? So you're not really listening to that. Yeah. Or that specific song. And then you hear it and you're like, whoa, the searches went up crazy. Again, listen to that episode, guys. I don't want to beat a dead horse with it, but I'm telling you, it is so unique. I was like, wow, can we do something like that on my podcast? I don't have any TV shows to talk about, but we can figure
go into the details of the behind the scenes. I love the reason I love Hard Knocks. You say oh, I don't care because I didn't know you on the Giants, but when you watch those stories and you see guys who are putting their whole lives on hold to try to make these teams, and
it is their whole life. They have nothing even put on hold. They are all in. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, and even worse. But to watch when they get injured, and it's tragic. And again, not that I ever want to hear because I thought it was a little outrageous to call it slavery to play in the NFL. But I do think to have guys who are honestly risking the possibility of death. We know that's rare, but really risking the ability to walk properly again, to have head traumas that are going to affect them. And of course, it's your choice. And of course, all of us on some level would love to be able to do it, but to not have those guys make sure they're taken care of by billionaires is just, it's criminal, in my opinion. I don't think anybody should ever walk on a football field in a professional game that's being aired and making billions of dollars for people that is not going to get some financial security out of it. But
knock on wood, I had a relatively healthy season, probably my healthiest season. And I played about 300 snaps, a little over that, I believe. And that's probably the most I played. I guess I played more in college here and there, but it was, at the highest level for sure. I was a significant amount of snaps my first year in the NFL, for me at least. And I felt like the game is safer. I feel like guys are in better shape. It's a less clumsy sport. You see guys really emphasizing the safety of the game. Tackling is the big thing, the head down stuff. You see way less of that, in my opinion. Like just come across the middle and lay guy out. And again, I know that's not what you're talking about either. I'm kind of shifting gears.
No, but you're right. But it's still, there still is Alex Smith. There still is.
That's a crazy one. Alex got cut too. He's gonna sign with a team that wants to be a contender because
they cut Alex Smith.
He just got cut. Yeah, either today or yesterday.
I don't even know that. Now I can't. I say the same thing about Brady. I can't even comprehend that they still want to play. Like once I don't know. I guess it's hard to say because obviously I love sports so much, and I know you got a touchdown this year, but I mean, I used to sit in my bedroom, which was like 8x10 when I was supposed to be doing homework, taking a football and catching those touchdowns that I was never, ever, ever going to catch. But so I know it's like for Brady, who, I posted like 3 years ago, anyone who doesn't respect him, let's say a proper goodbye to Tom Brady. And I'm like, why is he coming back? What is the upside to this?
Man.
And then he wins it. And why not? Why can't they win it again? I mean, they definitely could. Yeah. So
I hope they don't because they're in our division. But I hear you. Yes. Why couldn't they? They're a great team. They were great before he got there.
Yep.
And he's just a machine. And you know what? You said people work just as hard, and people do work just as hard, and people sacrifice a ton for what they do. But when you get to see Tom first time and see what he does,
it's crazy.
The guy's buy-in is tremendous, mentally, physically, and guys work just as hard as you do, and they do all of that sacrificing. I have a buddy who's been on the podcast. The guy hasn't had a drink since he got drafted 6 years ago.
Right.
I just cracked an Irish cricket on a Friday with you at 1 o'clock. So no, and again, it's just amazing. The guys in the league it's such a pleasure to play in. It's a first-class organization I get to play for. I'm lucky. The Giants were as well. The Bears were. And you don't always hear that about that.
Yeah.
Be honest with you, I don't know where to go here as we finish up because I'm gonna have you back on again. That's the only way I can handle not asking all my questions. And I appreciate it.
All good. So I appreciate it. And we'll get you back in. What I want to do is I want to start on our podcast. I want to start getting athletes on. I got Connolly fighting me all the time, but I'm like,
well, yeah, you got some bigger names before me, trust me. But listen,
to me, it's not about names at all. It's about just interesting guys. I mean, obviously Andrews Whitworth is a big name, but he's just such a fucking fascinating guy, and the stuff he does off the field and how smart and thoughtful to see a lineman, which is not typically what you would think of them. So I don't know. What interests me is bringing on people who have succeeded in whatever level and talking about how their friendships and how their relationships with family as well kind of influenced how they do it when they get there. So I mean, but again, I got to fight with Conley over every fucking guest I have on. It's like,
is there somebody that stands out to you the most that you want to get on right away? I mean, I'm sure they'd love to have Russ. I know you're close with Russell.
Yeah. I want the big guys that did the show, and I don't reach out and ask anybody, but obviously I want LeBron, I want Tom, I want Gronk.
You should reach out to Gronk. He's rolling right now. He would be that. I'm not saying he's the easiest, but seems personality wise, he'd be like, yeah, sure. No problem.
Yeah. I think Gronk will do it. My goal was to make sure that when I asked people, we weren't just asking for a favor, and we're growing now and growing. So I want to get it to the point, which was just like Entourage. I couldn't stand it when I would call people and be like, it's this show and this and that. So I like the idea that we're building it inside out, which is Kevin, and I, and hopefully people start to grow and do that. So, and we'll get them. But I want to be ready for them when we do,
Yeah, you will be, because I can guarantee you Gronk's listening. If you name that group of guys, Gronk's probably dialed in and giving it a listen.
I mean, Gronk on the set of the movie, he literally, I'm not exaggerating, he served extras soup till like 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, yo, you don't have to stay. He's like, are you kidding? I love this. And I remember like that day just thinking like, God, this fucking guy is so happy and so centered in his life. It's, you look at that, and obviously he was born with gifts that, like most people will never have. But the mindset and the mentality and the ability to go, I'm going to enjoy everything in life is a great thing to look at, not just for his career, but for off the field as well. So I love the guy. And same with Edelman and Brady, and I used to get all this shit on Instagram about like, oh, you root for the Patriots, you traitor, you scumbag. But the truth is, when you grow up, you start to root for the people that you admire, whether they're, on your team or not, and you can't look at those guys. And Belichick as well. It drives me fucking crazy that everyone's like, oh, maybe Belichick isn't that good. Brady is that good, and Belichick is that good as well. They both are. And I hope Belichick has another chance. I mean, I don't know who thought the Patriots were going to lose Tom Brady and not, and be good? Like, obviously there's got to be some rebuilding, but it'll be interesting to see if he can turn it around,
There'll be nothing like what they did there. And I think they definitely hang their hats on that, and they should, and they do. I really struggle with, and it's on topic, but I struggle with the hate for LeBron or the hate for Brady because of greatness, and everyone, which is great. Here's the thing. It pays my bills. It pays your bills when people watch, because the conversation, like Variety gave it a trash review. I'm going to watch it now and see this because I hate Variety, or I love. So I don't complain. I used to be like, these people are like in Philly, right, where I'm from. People struggled with the fact that I went to the Giants. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I've known you for 23 years, and you're struggling because I'm now like, what? Like, oh, if you play for Dallas, like I wouldn't be able to watch. Like, what? Like, I get that though, because listen, it pays the bills. But once you meet, it does. But when you meet somebody and you get to interact with somebody, especially, but my thoughts on LeBron and Brady, they're the greatest of all time. Jordan, of course, too. I'm not getting that debate, but I'm saying just enjoy this greatness, one. But two, the fandom side. Like, you struggle because I was going to be a Cowboy. Like, they're giving you shit because you had Patriots on your show. Like, of course, your movie.
And root for them when the Giants aren't playing them. I root for them, and Seattle as well. But not to have a sports debate, but like to talk about LeBron. I mean,
he's unreal, man.
Even looking at when he left Cleveland for the first time, I remember I bet, which he still owes me this dinner, but Iron Chef Michael Simon, I bet the Cavs don't even make the playoffs next year when he leaves. And the fact that to me, that's all you need to look at. He goes to a team, they make the finals. He leaves a team, they don't make the playoffs. They
have the first pick.
It's nuts. And the thing with Brady, which is hard to comprehend, you can sort of understand how LeBron can carry a team. You can't understand how Brady can do it. And yeah, I know Tampa was a really good team before, but still, like, it's just, what were the odds that they'd really win the Super Bowl in the first year there? You would think it would take so much luck and injuries. And then talking about Giants, like, to have JPP with two fingers gone be as good as he is. It's just, I don't know. The whole thing is crazy. But the two of them, what I look to and get inspired by both of them is, and I don't know anything inside, but they obviously have leadership qualities that are making everybody better. And to tear either of them down as athletes is so stupid. It's not even worth talking about anymore.
It blows my mind.
Yeah.
It blows the LeBron stuff, like the Brady stuff. I don't even listen to, but the LeBron stuff, he's what, 38? He looks like he's 25. He's out there just
the MVP, right? This year. I mean, I think, right?
He should be. I don't know. I'm not as much into the NBA as I was, just timing and whatever, but he's unreal, man. I hope he continues to do it. So Doug Ellin, Victory, the podcast. Tell everyone I said hi. I look forward to meeting everybody and getting out there, and hopefully everyone stays safe and healthy and a happy 2021.
Yep, you too. 21. Yeah. 2020 didn't exist, I guess.
Yeah, it just kind of went by. So have a happy 2021.
Yep. All right, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Yep.
Thank you a bunch, man. Have a great day.
We might not make it in the end, but we'll sure enjoy that ride. At least you'll have this song to remember. Remember me by.
Well, that does it for the Doug Ellin interview. Doug, again, thanks so much for coming on. Doug and I met through the DMs when I got a blue check mark when I was with the Bears, and I always followed what they did and commented on what they did. And Doug followed me, and I shot him a message and just said, "Hey, man, I love your work. I love what you're doing. Your show changed my life. It's really got a ton of great memories for me and my friends, some of my family members. So we're constantly talking about it, and it's really ingrained in what I do, with my friends and a lot of really good times. So, Doug, thanks again. Shout out to our sponsors, Wealth Advisory Services. If you don't know them, you should. Dave and Paul, just great guys. And again, if you have any questions, you can let me know. I'll put you in touch with them personally or check them out, wealthadvisoryservices.com. And it's a great way to get in touch with them. Shoot them an email through their website and ask them any questions need be. Tell them we sent you over here at Not For Long Media, and then the Fudge Kitchen I'm trying to lay off at guys. It's the off season. I'm already slow enough as it is, so I don't need any more fudge. But hey, I'll be okay. I got to work it off and just work out a couple more times a day to eat my fudge. I absolutely love it. I've sent it to a couple people already for their birthdays, and they're loving it. So if you order enough fudge to 2 pounds, you get a free half pound of the Saltwater Taffy from down here in Cape May. So that's great for me. Again, Doug Ellin interview. Thanks a bunch, Doug. Justin, one of the fun stories from that is from the Doug interview is, and I have a bunch of great Entourage memories, but when he brings up Eli Manning and he's laying into Eli Manning, one of my former teammates who I loved and got to know very well, and I ate either breakfast, lunch, or dinner with him during training camp my first year in the NFL and learned a ton. And just what a cool laid back guy he is. Some great stories. He's funny, but he's not an Eli Manning fan, which is crazy. He's a huge Big Blue fan.
I grew up just a fan of the Mannings in general. So that obviously big pay guy there. But yeah, that Eli story where he asked him to come on, and then, that's what the kids today call ghosting. He got ghosted by Eli, and yeah, you're not a fan.
No, he's not. It's a shame because Eli's the man. And I'm sure Eli will meet him and they'll meet up and whatever. And listen, Eli has a ton of things pulling him a million different directions, and so does Doug Ellin. Doug probably doesn't want to hear that, but I know, Doug knows, and they're, I don't want to speak for Doug, but I know this. I know he is frustrated, but the Mannings are pretty busy, and who knows what could have happened. Lost in translation. Again, I don't want to speak for the two guys, but both great guys. I've been able to meet Doug virtually and Eli's the man. So Doug Ellin interview. This is the episode 5. We're moving along here. We're moving along. We appreciate everybody subscribing, following, rate us. And remember this, folks that are listening right now on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or whatever you get your podcasts, we're on YouTube as well. So you can watch the actual episode of me and Doug on Zoom doing the interview. And it's kind of a cool feature that we do. You can see our intro. You can see everything that we do visually with our sponsors. So again, follow us, Not For Long Media. Follow Doug Ellin. He's great on social media, huge Instagram presence, so funny, and really does a great job with Victory, the podcast. So that's it for me and Justin and Not For Long Media, and we appreciate your guys' support.